Welcome to Module 3 on Instructional Strategies. The agenda or plan for today's presentation includes the following: description of the chosen instructional strategy I decided to focus on for this presentation, analysis of this strategy, and examples of this strategy in tech-based and best practices and findings from research studies. So let's start with a description of the instructional strategy that I chose, which is experiential learning. In the article, Getting Started with Experiential Learning by Taylor Hausberg and Sarah Godenkoff, they share that experiential learning is inspired by real-world problems and requires significant collaboration and are important because they represent a particularly authentic form of learning. They also ensure that students, not the teacher, do the intellectual heavy lifting of extracting meaning from experience. David Cobb discusses the process of experiential learning in his book on experiential learning. He shares that there are three models of the experiential learning process. First, the Lewin model of action, research, and laboratory training. And there, learning is conceived as a four-stage cycle, as you see here with this observation or with this graphic. Immediate concrete experience is the basis for observation and reflection. These observations are assimilated into a theory from which new implications for action can be deduced. These implications or hypotheses then serve as guides in acting to create new experiences. And the second model, and Dewey's model of the learning process, it involves observation of surrounding conditions, knowledge of what has happened in similar situations in the past, a knowledge obtained partly by recollection and partly from information and advice, and warning of those who've had wider experience and judgment, which puts together what is observed and what is recalled to see what they signify. A purpose that differs from an original impulse and desire through its translation into a plan and method of action based upon foresight of the consequences of action under given observed conditions. So this is the graphic from the article that I read regarding this learning model. We'll go to the next one. And then the third learning model is, and I hope not butchering the name, in Pigot's terms, the key to learning lies in the mutual interaction of the process of accommodation of concepts, schemas to experience in the world, and the process of assimilation of events and experiences from the world into existing concepts and schemas. Learning, or in Pigot's term, intelligent adaptation, results from a balanced tension between these two processes. The figure on the screen outlines the cognitive development theory, which identifies the basic developmental processes that shape the basic learning process of adults. And again, this diagram was also pulled from the article I read. While planning for experiential learning can be an exciting challenge, it can also be difficult to know where to begin. To help teachers get started, Hausberg and Gudenkauf offer the following 4 tips here to focus on planning for the action and reflection phases. So first, begin with the end in mind. Before diving into the nitty-gritty of planning an experiential activity, it's important to have a clear vision for how the activity fits into your course or lesson. Now, this should not be a surprise because we've covered this in modules 1 and 2. That's why clearly defining an activity's overarching purpose and goals should be the first step in your planning process. Once you've identified the goals of your activity, you're ready to begin crafting it, but not just any activity will do. A distinguishing feature of experiential activities is authenticity. So ask yourself, what are the real-world situations in which real people struggle with these concepts and skills? And how can I recreate those situations in my classroom, school, or training setting? Part of what makes experiential activities so exciting and so intimidating is the possibility of predicting where students will take them. While some students will follow the activity guidelines closely, others will want to push the envelope. While some will find it easy to synthesize and articulate what they're learning, Others will struggle to identify the latent lessons. How will your activity respond to a wide variety of potential reactions and responses? One strategy that's provided in the reading is to prepare multiple plans so that you can implement and reconfigure in response to students' reactions and emerging ideas. And number 4, reflection is essential if students are to extract the full benefit of experiential learning. So be sure to provide ample space and structure for this process. Ask students early and often to articulate what they're learning in relation to the academic and social and emotional objectives. And then finally, some examples that are part of this module that I'd like to share. In Sarah Gallo's article, From Safety to Soft Skills, 4 Common Use Cases for Experiential Learning Technology, it states that in fields like healthcare, manufacturing, law enforcement, mistakes are often not only expensive, but life-threatening. Experiential learning technologies, including virtual reality, augmented reality, and 3D training simulations, give learners a safe place to practice dangerous tasks. So here are some examples. Keeping pilots safe, experiential learning is an engaging and effective alternative for delivering safety training to learners in high-risk industries. The aviation industry, for example, has long used flight simulators to train pilots in a much more ideal environment for learning than that of an actual cockpit. Reducing risk in plants and hospitals. Training plant workers is another key use case for experiential learning, as it often involves high risk and can lead to costly mistakes. Consider the meatpacking industry, for example. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, coronavirus outbreaks plagued meat processing plants across the United States. As a result, it drove the demand for increased health and safety training. So to tackle this issue, Next Thought partnered with Oklahoma's Department of Career and Technology Education to deliver a hybrid learning experience combining virtual reality with in-person training. This experience teaches safety protocols, proper tool handling, and other meat processing procedures. Immersive simulations are also useful for training medical professionals. After all, practicing dangerous operations on humans can put their lives at risk. Kearney says that virtual reality is the only tool that can accurately replicate advanced medical procedures. And then third, police training is another area where experiential learning makes sense. Immersive simulations can recreate intense, often deadly situations, giving officers the chance to practice life-saving skills such as de-escalation. Virtual reality as the ultimate empathy machine, as it allows users to step inside someone else's shoes and understand their perspective. So that brings us to the fourth example, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for example, in 2019, Stanford's Zucker School of Medicine and Northwell Health piloted a racial bias virtual reality simulation. And they found that 94.7% of participants said virtual reality was an effective tool for enhancing empathy. 85.5% said the session enhanced their own empathy for racial minorities. And 67.1% said they would change their communication approach after the training. And if you remember in some of the other modules and videos that I provided, empathy is a really good facet of learning. And so it's really cool that this was mentioned as part of an example and that it was mentioned by participants in this particular study. So this concludes today's presentation on Module 3, Instructional Strategies. I hope this learning opportunity provided a description of experiential instructional strategy, analysis and examples of this strategy, and tech-based best practices and findings from research studies. Thank you, and look forward to Module 4. Take care.